I got this comment recently from someone. I'm guessing he was in his 20s, and he said, "Why would God allow my 6-year-old sister to die of horrible cancer?" And then he said, "And don't tell me God's just going to make the best of it." He was being honest, and he was devastated and angry, but I could tell he still wanted to believe, and it was causing conflict.
As well it should. And notice how little conflict it's causing in this guy.
Not an easy one to respond to, and probably one of the hardest questions our faith is ever going to face.
It's not a question. It's a paradox. A fundamental contradiction. This is the problem of evil again. And who wants to bet this'll be one more guy who runs away from the actual problem? The contradiction comes when you posit a being that is all-knowing, all-loving, and all-powerful. If he were all three of those things, he would end evil within his first nanosecond of existing. And for a religion like Christianity, it's even worse, because they believe that God has always existed, and moreover, when God created the universe, he already knew how everything was going to unfold, completely, in every detail. And he would have been powerful enough to make whatever changes necessary to prevent it. And if he were all loving, he would have wanted to. And that would have overridden every other concern. Now let's hear what this doofus has to say about it.
Then why doesn't he do anything about it? Why doesn't he intervene? I wouldn't let these things happen to my children if I had the power to stop it.
Exactly! What parent wouldn't claw their way through all 7 layers of hell for their children if they had to? And we're all supposed to be God's children, and he loves us at least as much as any parent.
The truth is, there really is no good answer to what we call the problem of evil, simply because there is no answer.
Oh, okay. Glad you admit it. Guess we're done. Oh, wait. There was more. God damn it.
But for me, the only satisfactory answer I've ever heard on this question comes from God himself, when asked by some poor soul in the Bible who was really suffering. His name was Job.
Oh yeah, the Job story. The one where God ruins the life of this really great guy because Satan double dog dared him to. And that's basically the story. Actually, it wasn't just Job. There was a lot of collateral damage, including his children and servants. It's kind of like that movie Trading Places, where a couple of rich guys ruined the life of Dan Aykroyd's character on a bet. Actually, the stakes in that movie were much bigger. These billionaires bet $1. That was more than God bet Satan. There was literally nothing at stake.
Finally, he lashed out at God and said, "How could you let this happen to me? I'm innocent. I did nothing wrong. I did everything right. Explain yourself to me." God's response came through a storm. "Who is this? Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Have you commanded the morning since the days began? Have the gates of death been revealed to you? Do you have the wisdom to command the entire universe and the power to operate it?"
Yeah, basically God went on this narcissistic screed. At no point does he actually answer the question or provide any reason. I wonder how Job would have felt if he'd told him, "Yeah, the devil dared me to do it. You understand." I'm reminded of a different movie at this point, A Few Good Men, the movie where basically every other actor carried Tom Cruise. Okay, that's every Tom Cruise movie, but in this case he came out looking better than usual because he actually had Jack Nicholson's help. Yeah, I'm thinking of that whole "you can't handle the truth" speech. The whole bit about how we live in a world that has walls, and what he does saves lives, and deep down in places you don't talk about at parties, you need him on that wall, and if you don't like it, why don't you pick up a weapon? All to avoid having to take responsibility for ordering a homicide. The sad part is, I've actually had a lot of pro-military bozos cite that speech to me as an excellent argument of why the military is so wonderful, completely missing the point. Now back to this bozo.
The man could only lay his hand over his mouth and learn to trust in the one who knows. And so will I.
See? I don't even know if there's a psychological term for this. It goes way beyond Stockholm Syndrome. It's like battered woman syndrome to the power of 100. God certainly has a serious case of narcissistic personality disorder, which makes it really sad because God doesn't actually exist. They've just been convinced that this imaginary being is real and he behaves that way, and they're still like this. They're psychologically battered without there being an actual batterer.
Evil is not some question to be answered or some riddle to be solved. Asking why only leads to, it's something to be overcome.
It is something you absolutely need to deal with. It's a fundamental contradiction embedded in your belief system.
When Jesus came down here and placed himself right in the midst of all our war and disease and suffering and evil, what did he do? He didn't just snap his fingers and make it all go away.
And why didn't he? If he were all-powerful and all-loving, he wouldn't have hesitated.
Instead, he bore it. Literally all of it. He suffered it patiently, and he crushed it permanently.
Really? Crushed it permanently? That was 2,000 years before the death of this 6-year-old girl. So in what way was it crushed permanently?
There's a scene from Dostoevsky's book, The Brothers Karamazov, that's etched in my brain.
Brothers Karamazov? Never heard of that. There's the Brothers Karamazov. What is it, a sequel or something?
In it is the Grand Inquisitor, evil incarnate, and he's blaming his prisoner, Christ, for all the evil in the world.
Well, why isn't he to blame? According to the very speech he gave Job, he was there at the start and laid the foundations of the earth and gave orders to the morning and did all of the other things, knowing that all this evil would arise and having every ability to prevent every last scintilla of it. If you set a boulder rolling down a hill and it killed a bunch of kids and their parents all yelled at you and you said to them, "Where were you when I sent the boulder rolling down the hill?" would you really expect them to be all that impressed?
But he suddenly approached the old man in silence and softly kissed him on his bloodless, aged lips. That was all his answer.
Pretty pathetic one if you ask me. Of course, he's entirely missing the point of this story within a story, but that seems par for his course.
So I don't think the question is, why does God let bad things happen? We can never know the answer to this.
It's not a question God needs to answer. It's a fundamental contradiction with your belief system. If you read the book of Job and come to the conclusion that God is anything but the most evil fuck ever to exist, then there's something seriously wrong with you.
But I think the better question is, what's my response?
Yes, it is. So let's hear it.
How do I respond to all the evil I see?
No, that's not the question. Stop evading. And you have no excuse. This concept predates Christianity at least 3 centuries, going back to Epicurus. Is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is feeble. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God?
Terrible things are going to happen. We can't control that, but we can choose how we respond to it.
Blah, blah, blah. Yes, we all agree that we should work to overcome evil. But why do we have to work to overcome evil? If your God exists and he's all-loving, all-knowing, and all-powerful, why is there any evil to overcome? Once again, we see a theology So So thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, leave a comment, and go to donate.bogosity.tv to keep me doing what I do. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.